Air conditioning changed things. Watches changed things. Social media changed things. Your concern is that AI is going to affect what we think and how we experience being human and shape us in ways we don't even really anticipate.
What's it going to look like to be a human being in the year 2035? Well, we're going to lose social intelligence, which you could argue has already begun, right, with the era of social media. So the ability, as you said earlier, Sean, to sit eyeball to eyeball, to engage in a meaningful, relational, communal interaction is going to begin to dissipate if we're not careful about it.
I think we need to take this extremely seriously because it's really causing serious damage already. There are college students who cannot read. There are high schoolers who cannot read.
There's always going to be a secular push to roboticize things and replace humans where they shouldn't be replaced. So we have to be mindful of that.
AI has taken the world by storm. What technology is on the horizon? What is positive with AI technology? And where should we be concerned? How can we wisely and biblically navigate our cultural moment? With me today are three experts from different fields, business, science, and philosophy, who are leading the way in how we think about, develop, and engage AI technology. Gentlemen, thanks for being willing to have this conversation.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, great to be here.
Let's jump in. Briefly explain. I'm going to have you introduce yourselves and just talk about how AI has revolutionized your field. Yohan.
Yeah, Yohan Lee. I'm the Associate Dean of Technology here at Biola School of Science, Technology, and Health. Computer science. I teach computer science. I teach AI. And the way it's revolutionized it is, on the one hand, from a student perspective, the discipline of computer science has expanded dramatically. And so for students who are really interested in computer science, it's about learning more and delving more into math and physics, to be honest, to be able to help shape and build new AIs that don't exist yet. So, yeah.
How long have you been at Biola?
2.5 years now.
Okay, so briefly tell us a little bit of the backstory, experience, and training you have that you've brought to your position now.
Right. Yes. So my undergraduate degree is, believe it or not, in neuroscience, predominantly in the areas of learning and memory. So it's almost like I was destined to go into this space. Then along the way, a PhD in big data analysis through bioinformatics. That's where I got my first exposure into machine learning and AI. And at that time, it worked fantastically well in a controlled experiment. And so to see what it is now has really, I just can't imagine, I couldn't have imagined that it would have gotten here this quickly.
Which makes us think, where's it going in the next 6 months, 12 months, 6 years?
Right.
But we'll get there. Michael.
Yeah. Michael Reyna. I'm the Dean of the Crowell School of Business. So I'm a corporate guy. I grew up in the corporate world. Came here about 3 years ago, most recently from AWS. And it's completely...
AWS is?
Amazon Web Services.
Got it.
And it just completely disrupted this field of what I study, which is management science. And thinking about productivity, thinking about human efficiency, thinking about how do we get the sort of the muck out of work and get to the work of the work. So it's revolutionized the field.
So the word revolutionized is not an overstatement when it comes to business.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, and I think we've only begun to see what's possible.
We're going to get into that. I'm really interested to see how you think it might transform business. Mihretu, our newest hire in the Apologetics program. We did a video with you, but I want you to introduce yourself again in case some people missed that and talk about kind of how AI has revolutionized philosophy, if you can even use that term.
Yes. My name is Mihretu. I'm Associate Professor of Philosophy and Apologetics here at Biola. I'm a family guy, so Biola was where I studied before, and I came back to home.
You did the MA Phil program.
Yes, MA Phil and also Science and Religion as well. So I have a PhD in Philosophy of Mind, so I work very closely to research on AI because I cannot really ignore AI. Because there are claims like AI can be conscious, we can upload emotions, AI is no different than you, and we can actually prove that you're inferior to AI. The whole premise of transhumanism is really kind of to dump human biology because it's defective design to upgrade human biology to a new level. And, computer science was born out of philosophy. So philosophers are the pioneers of computer science. So how can I ignore AI? I mean, I can honestly, like, I'll be outmoded. I'll be left over, like, if I turn my back against AI. So I work on AI research when it comes to philosophical issues. Like, can we really upload emotions on AI? Can consciousness be uploaded on computer gadgets and circuits? Well, I also teach philosophy of neuroscience. I teach AI as well. It's impossible for me to ignore multidisciplinary approaches to all sorts of issues having to do with AI and human brain.
So philosophy of mind have been wrestling with these issues for a long time, but now, like in the past maybe 2 or 3 years where we have tools like ChatGPT, it's felt more urgent and pressing. Is that fair in
Well,
your field?
people are predicting that we have now successfully kind of answered Turing, problem that, Alan Turing actually introduced in 1930s and 40s. We haven't. We haven't even remotely answered that. And that's a mimicry. Like, okay, you can come up with a computer, put it in a classroom, and then put another human being somewhere, and you can play that toy, exercise. But there are metaphysical and ontological setbacks in our way. We can never be in a position to create consciousness on gadgets because we do not have that metaphysical property. And
okay, now hold that thought. We're going to come back to you. This is really important. We get into metaphysics and ontology. Will AI become conscious is a huge question. Lean in a little bit for me, if you will, on the mic. Just get a little bit closer. Tell us maybe 1 or 2 publications. I want people to understand and appreciate the kind of work that you're doing, that you've done in the past 2 or 3 years on AI.
Yes, I am editing a book on AI, consciousness and unconsciousness with Wiley. It's a group of international thinkers, from discipline, from neuroscience, from medical science and computer science and all of that. Hopefully that will be published in 2027. And I'm actually almost in the near future will be able to kind of sign a contract with Bloomsbury on AI and human flourishing.
If people don't know Wiley and Bloomsbury, they're highly respected, leading publications. You've done work with Cambridge. I'm just bragging on you because you're in my department. I want people to understand what you bring to the table.
Yeah, so. I have another book coming out with Routledge.
Excellent.
I'm submitting it next month. So I have so many other publications.
Good stuff. Well, I not start, but in terms of moving into the conversation, give us an example of maybe 1 or 2 areas in your field where AI has just revolutionized the way we do business or science or something that blows your mind. You mentioned maybe a couple years ago we never could have imagined this. What's something you pause and you're like, when I was in grad school, I don't think I would have believed if somebody had told me this was possible with AI. Do you have an example of something like that, or am I overstating it?
No, you're absolutely right. I think for me, the one that consistently impresses me and gets me excited is machine translation. So that's the ability of AI to translate linguistics from one language to another language at a level of extremely high sophistication.
So give an example of how they would do that. My first thought goes to like Bible translation, how amazing that could be, that we've been laboring for years and all of a sudden we have this tool.
Yes.
And I mean, maybe this is outside of your field. Are people saying within our lifetime, within a short period of time, we'll have the Bible in every language? Does that seem doable?
That's the hope, right?
Okay.
Now, of course, everything is harder than we expect because what predicates that capability is whether or not we have enough of a corpus, a large body of knowledge in both languages so that you can make effective cognates, if you will. And so in some languages, they were considered high resource languages like English, Spanish, etc. But then some languages we consider low resource languages because we don't have a lot of material that spans a particular language in a digital format, such as on the internet, in text, in PDF, or in audio recordings like this. And so when it comes to low resource languages, AI struggles quite a bit. But in high resource languages, you get the difference between like conversational translation to business translation to academic translation, and then sometimes highly nuanced written verse. And so in that case, it could be incredibly powerful. So I hope within my lifetime, we get the Bible in every single language on earth.
That'd be pretty amazing if we could do that. I'm curious how else in science in your field this technology would help? Because for me, I did my dissertation about 10 years ago, and I had to I was studying the death of the apostles. So I found early sources in French, German, and Armenian.
There you go.
Tracked down people, and I paid them to translate it word by word for me.
Yes.
Obviously, AI could do that in the click of a button, but how else is this tool being helpful in the world of science and beyond?
Yeah. In the world of science, the great thing about science is a lot of it is just predicated on numbers and numerics. And so because of numbers, numerics, analyses, you are able to then analyze things at a scale that we just haven't been able to do. And then one of the challenges in a lot of experiments over the years as we collect a lot of digital data is that you can't compare apples and oranges sometimes. But when now you get thousands and thousands of analyses, all the different possible analyses that have been conducted in a particular area of, let's say, medicine, for example, then you can actually get smarter quicker. You can find out where there could be a white space, an interesting area of discovery that has not been plumbed to the depth, and then find novel approaches that we never considered before. That's what I find most exciting about this.
I saw an article about how AI was analyzing like whale language and communication
There you
and
go.
was like, what? This never crossed my mind that we could analyze the depths of it. And it seemed to break new ground from my understanding,
Yes.
limited understanding of whale language. That was the narrative, but it seems like that's just the beginning in many ways. Great example. Michael, you said it's not an overstatement to say that AI has revolutionized business. Give me some example of how AI just blows your mind.
I'm still trying to catch up with the neuroscience and the wells. So this may sound elementary compared to those things. It is the great equalizer from a knowledge standpoint. So just think about this. It's up-leveling people who are at the bottom or the beginning of any given knowledge set, and it's moving them up to the median or above instantaneously. I mean, just to give it like real examples.
Yeah, do it.
I studied this a lot, like onboarding someone into an organization and to learn what that organization does and what to do in their job. On average, that's about a 24-month to 30-month horizon for me or you to come into an organization and be at like the median of the knowledge set of that organization. People who are using AI in an AI native environment can do that in 3 to 4 months. So, I mean, it's just eradicating, bringing people up to just the average in such a way that they're being productive more frequently or more often, up to proficiency, and they can then start to focus on other things. So, I mean, that's just one example. There are so many
So what would that look like? I imagine 24 to 30 months. I'm talking with colleagues. I'm sitting in business meetings. I'm just absorbing it by being there, asking questions. Maybe there's some formal training. What does AI do differently that's what, a quarter of the time, roughly?
Well, I mean, you can think of knowledge as being both taught and caught. Like there's this, form of knowledge where you can read it, you can study it, and that has an uptake of whatever time frame it is. But then there's also the things that are caught, like the things that are modeled, the things that, and AI's really helped to accelerate the learning curve on both of those. So it's been quite dramatic.
So is this, just one more question, is this like the leaders of businesses are using it to educate, or people are just getting online and asking questions and using AI to more quickly learn, or is this some combination of both?
It's a combination of both, and I think we're still trying to figure out exactly how
what
to
it
do
looks
this.
like.
Yeah,
Okay.
so some organizations have figured it out and are already accelerating that learning process. Others are catching up to figure out how to do that. But at the end of the day, it's made us, and I hate to say this next to my technology friend, but it's made us all technologists, right? Like I can go in and vibe code a website. And I know coding about as well as I can speak Spanish, which is just a little. And it's kind of equalized the playing field for all kinds of different professions.
Oh, that's so interesting. In some ways, you're right. It makes us all technologists, but it makes the experts who used to be the older, seasoned, wise sages of a community. We saw this shift with Gen Z, where older generations are like, how to use social media? How do I set up Facebook in the day? How do I do YouTube? And younger generations became the expert. So it flips that on the head in many ways in business as well. Very interesting. Now, when you talk about revolution in philosophy, these things move a little bit more slowly and methodically. So I wouldn't expect there to be some technology that just flipped it on its head. But maybe give us an insight of, since AI has been here over the past 2 or 3 years, how these conversations have heated up in the world of philosophy.
Yeah, I think, so you don't see us like on a white gown, sitting behind a kind of sophisticated lab equipment and so on. But we really think about AI because it really is giving us insights into the nature of consciousness. So everything that you see around you, any AI tool that has ever been created is an instance of the complexity of human consciousness and nothing else. This is literally the outcome of a 3-pound wing organ inside your skull, this mysterious organ that God has created and designed. Like, we are trying to understand what the nature of consciousness is. So, okay, technologists will be inventing, enjoying, introducing, we're using that. It's great. But what did it take for such invention to be realized, for example? I think it took your consciousness. But what's consciousness? We have no clue. We have no clue. It's one of the most elusive properties that we all are carrying. And that's the property that's allowing you to invent all those magnificently impressive and astonishing things.
Now, let me jump in here. I did the MA Phil program in the early 2000s, and I had metaphysics, consciousness 1, consciousness 2. And there were leading thinkers, people like Jaegwon Kim, who would say things like, we don't have a clue how you get consciousness. You just said we don't have a clue. With the advent of AI, are a lot of philosophers more confident that they can solve that problem now? Or is there still a sense of like, we have no idea how consciousness could emerge by itself in a naturalistic world?
So there are diverse opinions. So physicalistically minded philosophers might think, okay, yeah, you're not different to begin with. You're just a biological machine, and we're modeling that, inventing computers. So there isn't kind of very surprising thing about you, but our own finitude, like we're not there yet to crack the code, but you are a biological machine. You have nothing by way of like soul. You're not a soul. You're not a spiritual being in any way. But we will get there and we will answer this question. But the problem is like the origin of consciousness. Is it being caused by the complexity of nervous system, or is it something that enters into the constitution when the nervous system is ready? Like just like as you would expect a guest into your home when, okay, everything is in place. Now you open the door and the guest appears. Is that how? I have actually published defending that view. And we literally have no clue. So JP, myself, and some dualist philosophers, we are incredibly skeptical of what the physicalists are really telling us is the case. It's not as simple as that. But the most surprising thing about this stuff is everything that you see around you is literally the result of consciousness. What exactly is consciousness? I think it feels like God has thrown away the key, and then he tells us that just enjoy. I mean, it doesn't mean that we cannot understand the nature of consciousness, or I'm not saying we can't make progress, but up to date, we haven't made any progress in answering the origin of consciousness or the nature of consciousness. But we know what it is. It's too familiar, but too elusive.
That's interesting. I love it. As a philosopher, I have so many questions for you, but we'll come back to it. We're going to get to some of the positive about AI. We're going to get to how we might think biblically about AI. But I want to know what concerns each of you most. Like for me, loss of jobs would concern me. I'd love your take on that. I just heard a podcast this morning about how Hollywood, certain figures are like ready to just kind of pull the trigger on using AI in a way that will result in a lot of loss of jobs potentially in that world. I'm concerned about the loss of the ability to know truth from fiction, especially some of the videos that come out. I mean, I was speaking at an event and somebody just for fun was like, I'm just going to make up an introduction for Sean from Trump. And they just, to be fun, chose the president. And I sent it to a few people that are like, wait a minute, is this real? Which made me laugh that they thought the president would give me an introduction. I'm like, you actually think this is real? But they paused for a minute. So like the inability to know truth from fiction concerns me. some of the dehumanization, just in the sense of when I'm all for saving time, but when AI does things that humans should do. Like I remember the first time I heard a guy that broke up with a girl texting. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. You got to look somebody face to face. You owe that to them. So I have a bunch of concerns, but I'd love to go kind of just field by field and tell me what concerns you most. And we'll just keep the pattern going this way. Yohan, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, it is that dehumanization. That's the thing that concerns me the most. I mean, these are technologies, these are tools, these are products that are meant to be solving a problem and providing some form of human benefit and advantage. And when products like this cause a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old to commit suicide, that's a fail in the most dramatic terms, right? And so these are not just nascent technologies that you just leave on the shelf. I mean, these must be used with discernment. So getting into the inability to think, because as technology gets more complex, as capabilities get more complex, then because of profit motive or efficiency, you're going to start seeing a lot more synergy. Now it's AI for self-driving cars. Will it be airplanes one day? Right? Will it be the next, rocket ships, you name it. Anything that is typically a crewed vehicle, could that then be replaced with an AI? It may be, and there may be tremendously good reasons for it. And I can be a proponent, and I can also be a critic. But the part that I think that really matters is humans need to be able to handle the corner cases when technology fails. Humans need to be able to solve and understand what's going on when it doesn't work. I mean, we just had a massive global outage of a tried and true technology for the last 15 years that cost a lot of time and money, right? And again, time and money is just time and money. It's not at the same scale of value as human life.
Sure.
But if the more that we offload our thinking to an AI, then our students and our future operators and engineers and scientists of the world are going to be less equipped to do the math and figure out, when did the code break? When did the technology break? What was the corner case that it mistook? That's important, because for anything to be successful, you have to be able to support it well, you have to be able to operate it well, you have to maintain it well, and you have to be able to troubleshoot it well, and you have to be able to know how to take it offline and replace it with something in the meantime for basic business continuity, and then most often health and human safety. So we need to be experts in the technology when it breaks, because it always breaks.
So it sounds like you're saying there's dehumanization on two levels.
Yeah.
Number one, when we export things humans should do to technology, we lose something of what uniquely makes us human and flourish.
Yep.
On the other hand, the more we export to technology and that technology fails, and it has failed, and we see it fail, then we're caught in this cycle where we don't have the ability to really fix it and catch it because we're so dependent on it, which makes me think we could come back to this, Mihretu, that oftentimes people would say, what are you going to do with a philosophy degree, right? Like, what's the point? I think I heard Lee Strobel in a talk here at Biola like 20 years ago. He told a joke about how, what does a philosophy major and a medium pizza have in common? And he's like, neither can feed a family of 5. Like, the joke is you can't do anything with philosophy. If you're right, actually learning to think critically, uniquely human skills might be gaining in their value in a way we didn't appreciate in the past.
Absolutely.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. What concerns you in the world of business?
I got to dive in on the human skill thing here first. I mean, I think that a philosophy degree is going to matter more than ever in the future.
100%.
I think that a liberal arts education, to think critically, to reason, to be able to dive deep into, what's happening here and what are all the unintended consequences, is more essential to our survival than ever before. So I'm not afraid of the tech. I'll start with that. I'm afraid of the humans. And what I mean by that is, I'm afraid of the thinking of the humans who design and build the tech. And I'm afraid of us as users of the tech and how we may misuse, abuse, and frankly, give away our freedoms as a result of it. So for me, the existential crisis is on the human side, not the tech side. We can build guardrails on the tech. But we in the liberal arts, philosophy, critical thinking, psychology, we've got to be thinking about all the human consequences. One of the, yes, there will be, as the business guy, yes, this is going to affect jobs. There will be a pretty radical job dislocation. I mean, we're seeing it. We're seeing it already. In the long term, I'm not as fearful about that because we've shown the resiliency to recreate new jobs and come up with new ideas. So I think that's a threat in the near term. I think the long-term threat's on humanity. There was a great study done from Elon University, and it asked this simple question: what's it going to look like to be a human being in the year 2035? And the experts all said things like, well, we're going to lose social intelligence. So our ability, which you could argue has already begun, right, with the era of social media. So the ability, as you said earlier, Sean, to sit eyeball to eyeball and to engage in a meaningful, relational, communal interaction is going to begin to dissipate if we're not careful about it. Yeah, cognitive dependency. Certainly, there have been studies where, if we over-rely on AI, our brain doesn't have the same cognitive load, doesn't have the same synapse connections. And those are all true. But the one that scares me most from that study is the loss of our human identity. And I just think about that for a moment. Just play with Sora 2, and I could pick anything, right? I could pick anything. I don't know how many have played with Sora 2, but I can put myself in the middle of a story as hero. I can make myself the hero. I can make myself anything I want to be in this artificial world and give up my God-given identity, what created in his image for something that the world is. So those are the things that, are incredibly alarming to me.
So the business angle, we're moving from a non-AI to an AI world. And probably those in the middle, we're going to see more loss of job. But your sense is we might kind of settle in that once we have people who haven't been trained 30, 40 years ago in such a different world, that we'll adapt economically, would be your sense. But the bigger concern is, let me frame it in a way, tell me if you agree with this. I suspect all of you agree with this, that technology is not neutral. And I don't mean morally neutral. That's another question we could talk about. But technology affects us. Like the airplane made the world different when you could travel to Europe in a way people couldn't before. Air conditioning changed things. Watches changed things. Social media changed things. Your concern is that AI is going to affect what we think and how we experience being human and shape us in ways we don't even really anticipate.
I think it could.
It could. Okay.
And I think our responsibility is to start thinking about it much more holistically. So as a business person, I'm training every business student that comes through Crowell School of Business in AI literacy. Otherwise, they will be at a significant disadvantage. But just as important, more importantly, I'll say, foundationally below that is how do you think ethically about the use of AI? So one corner of what we call the triangle, the top being AI literacy, another corner being how do you think about this from, as a biblically centered institution through a set of biblical principles and with an ethical lens. And then the other is how do we teach the enduring human skills? Because it turns out that the technical skills have a shelf life, and that's shrinking radically because AI is augmenting that. But the human skills, how do you engage in a conversation? How do you think critically? How do you influence other people? Those things are enduring. So my hope, on my good days when I'm hopeful about this, if we can teach AI literacy and do it with a set of ethical principles and teach people how to be better human beings that can influence one another, positively influence, then I'm very hopeful. On the days where I think we over-index towards AI literacy only without those two foundational traits, that's when I get scared about humanity.
Last question, quick follow-up. Do you have a sense of how much that's being done in the business world?
It's interesting. It's if you ask the business world this question, they will say, yes, by all means, we're thinking about this ethically. If I were to ask, those of you who have studied ethics, are they thinking about it that way? The answer is they haven't been trained to. So the short answer is I don't think there's malintent here, with a few exceptions. We
yeah,
could
that's fair.
debate those.
That's fair.
But I think what it is, and this is the liberal arts education and why it's so critical these days, I think we have not taught people how to think ethically, how to ask these questions, and we've tossed them into these technology engines, and they're building things based on their own moral code, and usually based on, Yohan said this already, with a capitalistic mindset that speed matters disproportionately. So all these other things are coming along later, maybe, but they haven't been trained how to think about these things.
Oftentimes what I've seen is ethics follows the technology because it's just too powerful and transformative. You're trying to do differently here, which I appreciate. As a philosopher and apologist, Mihretu, what concerns you the most about AI?
I'd like to begin by thanking Yohan and Michael. Honestly, I'm profoundly grateful for your observations. This is one of the areas where I'm vocally in a kind of extremely kind of critique of the relevance of AI. The critical thinking is really irreplaceable. It's not something that we can negotiate over.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what your discipline is. It literally doesn't matter. That's a requirement. That's a prerequisite for you to succeed in anything that you do. So I think AI, if it's not handled carefully, if we are outsourcing everything to AI, the end goal of that kind of commitment to AI is going to be disastrous.
It'll make us data clerks.
Completely. So organic thinking should be taken very, very seriously. So organic thinking shouldn't be handed over to AI. Imagine, there's irony here. So these people who are writing these programs or algorithms and so on, they are using their mind, right? They are effectively using their mind. But they are telling the rest of us, no. Don't read the book. Here is AI summary. Don't even put your finger on the book. You don't have to even know the color of my book. You pretend as if you're an expert. Okay. That's the disservice. You need to read a book from cover to cover if you really want to be a genuine expert. And also our conception of knowledge has to change. Knowledge has to be pursued for intrinsic reasons, not only always for financial gain.
Or instrumental. Okay.
Yeah.
Explain the difference between intrinsic versus instrumental value of thinking.
Intrinsic knowledge is a knowledge that you can pursue for its own sake. There's nothing attached to it. Like, I want to make X amount of money, or I want to be famous, or I just want to impress people. Those are very, very instrumental, pursuits. Instrumental value or knowledge is a knowledge such as, for example, I have money. Let's say I want to have a degree in computer science because I just want to make money. I'm really laser focused on making money. That's it. I really don't care. So I think we need to take this extremely seriously because it's really causing serious damage already. There are college students who cannot read. There are high schoolers who cannot read. A study came out of MIT. I don't know if you were referring to that study.
Yes.
ChatGPT users' brain conductivity is almost undetectable.
Yeah.
And brain users, which means people who really struggle and sweat over reading, writing in an organic way, it's like California wildfire. You can actually see the brain is lit up. There is a neuroscience, as Yohan knows, and Michael, actually you also know, neuroplasticity, for example. Neuroplasticity is the concept that how much you challenge your brain is proportional how effective you would become in terms of having this rich cognitive life. The less you challenge yourself, and the outcome that you get is proportional to how less you're challenging yourself. So I think even in business school, for example, there has to be a philosophy of business where students not only kind of taking this skill, which is extremely important. AI literacy is extremely important, but they need to also be equipped with business philosophy. Like, what kind of person should you be as a businessman? Like, how should you interact with other people? How should you handle difficult situations? Not only like solving tech-related problems, but human beings are problems themselves, right? they are incredibly difficult creatures to deal with in some situations. So how can you manage and navigate that environment? This cannot be done without critical thinking faculties.
Amen to that. And by the way, you're a dualist. You and JP Moreland, two of the leading defenders of the idea that we're body and soul today. So when you talk about neuroplasticity, we have a soul, an immaterial component. We have a physical component. And they interact. What we do with our minds affects our bodies. What we do with our bodies can affect our minds. When we export some things we're supposed to do with our minds, we actually see the negative effects in our bodies.
100%.
Hence, using ChatGPT in certain fashion affects the processing and development of the brain.
Imagine the memory capacity of ChatGPT users is shrinking down to seconds. Like they don't even record what they have posted 5 minutes ago. Why? If you haven't sat on something, if that's literally is not something that came out of your own effort, what do you expect to remember? Let's suppose I have Mike in the math class. You are a math genius, and I hired you, I gave you money, and I am there, I'm a student, and you are my ChatGPT. And I show you the calculus problem. Mike, okay, here is it. What should I say? And you tell me, and I write that down. And then I got an A on a calculus exam. Do you hire me as a mathematician in your school? Like,
no chance.
That's literally what ChatGPT is all about. You put the prompt, and it spits out to you information, and that's not yours. If you write an essay by downloading from ChatGPT, you haven't written anything. You need to admit that. So I think we need, as Christians especially, like the life of the mind means loving God with your mind means literally sweating, spending countless hours doing your own thing genuinely with integrity, and that's not a loss. And that's exactly how you can show your own integrity. That's how you can prove your own genuine expertise. You can't cut the corners. You would be caught. Like if you fake your way, you will have no hiding place. Like if you stand in front of me as a mathematician and if you have faked your way, I can make your life miserable in half a second. Here is a whiteboard. Here is a marker. Go ahead and show me derivatives and blah, blah. Just show me. And that's a reckoning moment for you. Faking your way is not going to help you. And people need to understand that.
This distinction, oh yeah, go ahead.
I just want to follow up on that because, this whole dualist, I've actually studied your work and JP's work, and I think this whole dualist approach, it's thinking, but it's also experience and the inner experience. And I think about it this way, like the Turing test actually was B, in university just south of where we are right now. But it was beat because it mimicked human emotion. But it never felt it. It never experienced it. It doesn't know what love really is. It just knows how to mimic those emotions. And I think that's the real danger, is that this inner experience, both learning and then emotional, is something that AI will never mimic. And that's who we are, as image bearers. And we've got to be very careful to, not give that up.
Can I add something?
Please,
This is a brilliant point because what Michael was referring to is what we call first-person experience, the ability to introspect your own mental states. For example, right now, as I engage in this kind of conversation, in the back of my mind, I'm literally running so many other things. I am aware of those things, but they are not relevant for me. I'm not going to let them come to the surface of my consciousness and be part of this conversation. That ability is incredibly mysterious. Imagine you literally are aware of what's happening inside your mind, not brain, mind. Brain is important to just facilitate. We're not our brains. So first-person data is 100% unmanageable given any neuroscientific studies. Like you peer into my brain as much as you want. You can come away with blood flow and neurotransmitters and electricities and proteins and boiling water and so on. But where is my information? Where did I store? You can't see my beliefs. You can't see my desires. You can't see my plans, my regrets, and so on. If I am not soul, where are those things? If you have access to my physical brain, why can't you actually tell me where everything that information is? Where?
Well, memory, because memory is storable and identifiable. So let's not forget that piece. I mean, that's been discovered for a little over 30 years.
The memory,
right.
yeah. So I have actually a great skepticism when it comes to memory. Yes. We can know certain parts of your brain, hippocampus and synaptic connections and so on, but no one has ever been able to actually show me where is that information. You can show when this structures get damaged, yes, exactly. You will not be able to remember, and that's correlation. That's not causation or identity. Those two things have never been shown in any discipline.
The ability for memory formation and where those are located has been shown, but more importantly, though, the thing that you brought up, the two of you brought up, and this is a little controversial against Michael, is because, friction is really important. Like, I love friction. I know that goes against some of the things that you say at times. But yeah, I mean, because friction is where we learn. But more than that, it's when I think about what's at the end of the line, right? At the end of the line, if you're not delving deep into these faculties, developing these faculties, these capabilities, these skills, and again, I'm not just all about skills here. People then are leading their lives to misery, whether they know it or not. We're talking about the bonafide right now, right? What is the good life? What is the richness of life? What's the point of living? The more you offload, like you said, the more you fake, you're just leading towards misery. Whereas, why are we enthralled as human beings? Why do we have joy as Christians? It's because amidst all the friction, we've learned to do really, really good things. And our product is not about being productive. It's about actually doing things in this material, real, natural world and recognizing that a lot of the times these things that we do are good and they're beautiful. And that brings joy and satisfaction amidst all the challenges and all the muck. And so for me, it's always about, we want to train our students, because let's be very clear, as academicians, what are we in the business of? We're not just in the business of academic formation. We're in the business of spiritual formation as well. And so what does that mean? Helping develop people to live and have and enjoy a better life, because in our beliefs, what do we believe? That the chief end of man is what? To love the Lord and know him as fully as possible, and then enjoy him and what this means on this planet. And this is where the evangelist in me kind of kicks in, right? Like when you do street evangelism for the first time, it is absolutely terrifying. It brings you that reckoning moment, like, oh my gosh, what am I doing on the beach here on 3rd Street Promenade in LA, right, in Santa Monica? But when you do it, and because you believe in it, you literally believe that you are here to bring good to the world, that's living. That is pursuing and then recognizing that all the things in your life experience, the memories, the emotional context, can be brought to bring a tremendous good to people around you that you've never met before. And what throws me off half the time when I do this is I am actually surprised that people want to listen to me, that people actually care that I am out there on the street trying to share with them the word of God, that there is hope in this world, that there's a good out there. What blows me away is not the doing, and just like Michael said, it's not about the tech, it's about the person. What blows me away is that people are actually receptive.
Hey, Yohan, let me jump in and ask you this before we shift back. One of the arguments that Mihretu was making is a common argument for the soul. That there's third-person access. You could study someone's brain, but then there's first-person access that you can only get by asking the person to reveal it. So I could know in principle maybe your emotional state, angry, anxious, sad, but I could never know what's driving it unless you tell me. So there's an interaction between the mind and the brain in terms of maybe where memories and how they're stored, but the content of that would require a first-person reveal. You agree with that?
Yes, and I have to, because neuroscience has indicated from what are called near-death experiences, NDEs.
Love it.
People who have essentially been brain dead, potentially physiologically dead, on the surgical operating table, and they experience an ability after they're resuscitated and revived that they can completely recall the events that were happening in that operating room while they were unconscious and unable to see, visually unable to hear, whatever it is, right? And enough of those instances have been surfaced in academic literature, not on the orders of tens and hundreds, but literally thousands. That's not a trend. That's a pattern. That is observed phenomena. And so whenever you have observed phenomena like that, as a scientist, I must reconcile that is a real thing, right? And it's been reproduced and reported literally thousands of times. So that indicates there is something in the first person, distinct from the physical biological reality of the brain, that is able to be aware, able to hear, listen, cogitate, cognate, and also process, and then be able to indicate that there was an emotional component there. There was a physiological sensory component there, completely devoid of the human corpora. And so, yes, the evidence indicates that I have to believe that there is a first person.
And the key to that is, and then I'll come over to you, the key to that is people come back and have information they could not have had while their brain is not registering any activity.
Yeah.
One more thought, then we're going to shift back to AI.
I'm going to go back to memory. Yeah. So I've recently given a kind of interview on memory and stuff, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there are hippocampus, for example, is implicated in facilitating memory and synaptic connections and so on. Yeah. So here's a conundrum about memory. You read a book. Let's say 3 of us read a book, and we threw that book away, and we meet like this, and all of a sudden start talking about the book. What went from that book to your wherever it went? You didn't chew up the book. You didn't.
Protein synthesis. You produced a memory of the book.
That's a model. That's a theory.
Yes.
So we don't confuse model and theory as if it's explaining what the mysterious aspect of how memory actually works. So we read, okay, I didn't chew out the book. I have no idea how the information went from that book, wherever it went, no idea whatsoever. And so we have this incredible capacity to compartmentalize our own memory lives. Like, if I were to ask you about your life history, you're not going to confuse that with your responsibility that you have here at Biola. I mean, you're not going to talk about your students. And you at ease, you pull that information out within the context that required you to do that kind of stuff. So your family life, blah, blah.
Sure.
Okay. Peer into my brain using any kind of technology you like. You're not going to be answered that question. You're not. You're not going to show me a file. You're not going to show me, oh, his history is over there. His history is just 1 inch away from the hippocampus toward the limbic system and so on. You're not going to be able to do that. So there is a deep mystery here. I also don't believe that the bearer of memory is your physical organ, your brain. Your brain has actually a limited capacity spatial-wise, but you have potentially infinite. You have a capacity to memorize infinite amount of information. Potentially, I say it. Not actually, potentially. So the brain as a physical organ is a limited space. So if you have an ability to contain potentially infinite amount of information, then it's not the brain that's doing the magic. Something deeply mysterious.
Something beyond the brain.
Beliefs are
namely
not
the
born
soul.
by the brain. Desires are not born by brain. Memory is not born by brain. All non-physical properties are not born by brain. Brain is important. I'm not doubting. Healthy functioning of the brain is absolutely necessary. But
Like
it's
you
not
said,
sufficient.
it's both.
But it's not sufficient. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. I want to know where each of you think maybe AI technology is headed. And you could pick 6 weeks, you could pick 6 months, you could pick 6 years. What's something you see that's maybe on the horizon, or maybe in your case, where this conversation is headed? Where do you see some of the technology headed?
That's a big question. Honestly, I need a lot more time to think through that because, you know, being in the business of AI research, you're focused on what is in front of you, and so my ability to do long-term projection is a little bit on the weaker side.
That's fair.
But when I think about immediately, like, where is it headed? Obviously, it's retooling industries right now. It is unfortunately playing far too big of a part in our media and consumptive abilities. The concerns that Mihretu, he and I actually shared this concern. It's when you don't read that book cover to cover, you just miss out on a ton. Primary sources are critical because you have to do the mental frictional exercise of, wait, did I just, I read this paragraph, it's in English, it's really hard, what did I just read? That exercise of going back and rehearsing and trying to muck through that or go through that harder equation from, into triple integral calculus, those bits are there. So there's going to be a friction, there's going to be a tension there. On the other hand, there's the really exciting, wonderful things. So 6G wireless is coming very, very soon. The ability to transmit and consume information at scale much quicker, greater volume and velocity is going to make our interaction with digital spaces much more immersive and consuming, which comes with all the negatives, as you can imagine.
Of course.
Other areas where I think where AI has taken us is a mechanized reality, where, when you think about Fourth Industrial Revolution now and transhumanism, there's always going to be a secular push to roboticize things and replace humans where they shouldn't be replaced. So we have to be mindful of that. But where it could be incredibly helpful is in developing and discovering new, whether it's potential advances in medicine, new means of better managing resources, material resources on the earth, how to do extraction for energy better, faster, with a much smaller destructive footprint. All of these. So for me, I love AI in the sense of its discovery potential as a tool for increasing the human condition economically. Like, the area that I get really excited about is AI to better train robots for elder care. Like, we're in Southern California. A massive demographic explosion is going to happen soon. And skilled nursing facilities, the first thing they bring up is our biggest challenge is turnover. We don't have enough skilled nurses. We have more patients than we can to meet the needs of the way that we would want to as individuals. And so robots for skilled nursing to assist people who cannot afford it, folks who cannot get the level of discrete care necessary, that's the thing that gets me excited. But then all the negatives come with that. And so I'm constantly schizophrenic between what I need to manage and what I need to advance.
That's like a whole show in itself, because we talk about not wanting to dehumanize.
Correct.
And a robot can't replace presence, but can it help with somebody who literally has no one or not anything to help them as a part of the process?
Yes.
That's where it could potentially help out. That's amazing. I just saw a study on AI this week. They were talking about trying to replicate the hand and how it's one of the hardest things because there's so many sensors on the hand, which to me is an argument for intelligent design, how it would have happened by chance. But I digress. Tell us a little, Michael, how you see what's maybe on the horizon in the business world.
It's a really hard question to answer because I don't think any of us really know, and we've never seen a technology move at this velocity. I mean, it's just incredible.
Ever in your lifetime, any technology we think of.
We have broken Moore's law, right? I mean, Moore's law would say that compute capacity is going to double every 18 months to 2 years. We know just from NVIDIA alone that the last NVIDIA chip increased inference by 30x from the previous one. I mean, we've never seen technology like this. So the speed and velocity, and we've only really seen generative AI. I mean, that's the buzz, right? That's what we're talking about, and it's actually hit us in places that we didn't think it would hit first, which is like software development, and some of those areas. I'm very long on the discovery capacity of AI. I think DeepMind's doing some incredible stuff. There was one study recently where in 17 days they discovered, I think it was 400,000 new hard materials, and that would have taken us as human beings 800 years to discover. So
17 days.
So 17 days of 800 years collapsed to 17 days. So like the breakthrough possibilities on things like how will you power your next vehicle? The medical breakthroughs. I mean, we've already been able to use AI in a fairly crude format from where it will be to increase breast cancer detection by 17%, and so you start to think about these medical areas. I feel really good that on the opposite side of that. So it's less about the tech and it's more about the concentration of where the tech's being built. I'm concerned about this thing that's now being called, abundant AI. How do we make AI more abundant, like more accessible to everybody? It sounds good, right? It sounds great, except for the concentration of the people who are trying to do that is really locked in to 3, 4, or 5 different organizations that are, in strange ways investing billions of dollars in one another. So it's become a bit of a closed society, and I think we as believers need to be concerned. even the term abundant AI, right? We know what abundance means, and we know what John 10:10 says, that Christ came to give us life abundantly. So the deception, even the deception of that, is scary. So on the medical discovery breakthrough side, it's going to be astounding. On the misuse, limited, sort of isolation of power and who has control over those things, I'm super scared.
How much of it, if you can say in the business world, is really the technology and the use of it is driven by money?
I don't know if I can give a percentage, but I will say that it's the first, second, third thought.
That answers my
Of
question.
people who are applying this, right? And I've been driving change inside corporations my entire career. I have never seen a change mandated upon people with more velocity and aggression from the top down than what I've seen this. And the human beings aren't ready to, adopt it completely because we're going to give up something that's essential to us. The conversation we were having before, I built my identity in this work that I've mastered, and I'm being forced to use a solution that will put me out of business from that perspective. So yeah, the commerce part of this is driving it, and all these other conversations we're having, they need to catch up. And I think that's our obligation. Our obligation is to lean in more aggressively on the ethics side, on the consciousness side, all these other things, because otherwise commerce will drive this.
Man, that's definitely that's a scary thought. We'll come back to how each of you are leading the way in that regard. I'm going to throw a wrench your way, Mihretu. You said something earlier that's kind of been in the back of my mind. What I've been hearing people say, maybe for the past few decades, is when will computers and thinking catch up with human beings? You said it earlier, there's a push to show that it's surpassed human beings and we are inferior. Right. Is that a shift that you've seen? Is that where kind of the conversation is going, catch up? Clearly AI is superior than human beings.
Yeah, I think, if this is exactly what proponents of strong AI want to do.
Define strong AI.
A strong AI is the idea that computers are not simple tools. Computers can ontologically be superior to human beings, their own inventors and creators.
So they're not just, to use the way Michael framed it earlier, they're not just imitating human thinking. They are really doing it and going beyond
that
it.
Would be weak AI. So weak AI just playing computers, and computers can allow you to do X, Y, Z. That's fine. They are our servants, and we can get things done. The strong AI is entirely predicated upon philosophical assumption that we can create superintelligence. Superintelligence is kind of a hardcore evidence that you are inferior to your own gadgets. That's exactly what they do, and they write about it, and they argue for that premise. And I think that's not possible because I'm actually working on a mathematical model that I think for the past 7 years or something like that. I call it N+1. So earlier I said that everything that we've invented so far is a reflection of our creativity. Mm-hmm. So AI is not like something that descended from heaven, no matter how complicated
or
it is.
Or evolved naturally.
Yeah, it didn't come through natural selection or kind of evolutionary stages. It took hours and hours, years of collaboration among experts and so on, and they write algorithms and programs and so on. I mean, it's literally ironic to say, you look back at what you've done and say, yeah, you are superior to me. What does that mean? You're already ahead of that because it took you to bring that into being. So it's impossible to narrow that gap. That's not a physical gap. That's not a technological gap. That's ontological gap. That's a metaphysical gap. So, for example, at no point, none of us would say, oh, now we are equal to God, shoulder to shoulder, and God is inferior to us because we created these gadgets and he didn't. Who did give you the infrastructure, the cognitive infrastructure that allowed you to do this? God. If God is not metaphysically superior to you, so you're not going to be able to be in a position where God would become all of a sudden inferior to you. We are gods to these gadgets. It took us. We brought them into existence. It doesn't matter what they end up doing. So we shouldn't be surprised. And I am laser focused on human beings, by the way. I always appreciate human beings. human beings are incredibly gifted creatures. But when they tell me that a computer gadget is superior to me, what are you talking about? You are doubly super intelligent. It took you to bring this into existence. So that argument doesn't really fly. You can talk about the smartness in a functional sense. Yeah, there's a distinction between functional smartness and natural smartness. So computers can be, functionally smarter than you because they are so fast, they can contain and analyze a huge body of information in seconds, all right? That's functional ability, functional
like
smartness.
operational ability.
Operational. But you have a natural smartness that allowed you to make such a thing be possible in the first place. So therefore, you maintain that status, that ontological status, with zero fear of that status being hijacked away from you by any future AI. So I'm not going to lose a slip over it, by the way. And many people make this hyperbolic statements, oh, AI, blah, blah. I honestly laugh at people when they make such arguments. It has zero basis. They are almost me saying, like, I'm not giving this interview in English.
While you're doing it. Contradicts itself.
It's pretty contradictory.
Fair enough. That's the importance, again, of critical thinking. What does it mean to be human? Do we have a soul? And if AI is derivative of us, what does that say about us? I'm gonna ask each of you a question. What would it mean to think biblically about AI? I'd love to apply biblical stories, biblical principles, ideas to AI. I think would be helpful. One comment I'll make while you're thinking about this, Mihretu, I've always thought it's interesting is that in sci-fi movies, we make robots, they learn to think, they rebel against their creator, and then we have to save them from the rebellion. Sounds a lot like Genesis 1-3. So when people say we're going to have strong AI and they're going to rebel against us, we're going to have to stop the rebellion, I'm like, we've kind of heard this story before, which tells us there's nothing new under the sun. But with that said, what would it mean in your field or broader just to think biblically about artificial intelligence?
So I teach computer science courses, and I start every class with a verse of the day and an AI of the day, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because I'm trying to show students the correlates. Like, what does Scripture tell us to help frame what an AI can do or an AI is doing right now? Because the students of today will be the engineers, the algorithm makers, the inventors, the entrepreneurs, and the leaders of tomorrow. So for me, it's a sobering reminder that I have a responsibility of training up that next generation. So when I think biblically about these things, that's an example of a tactical, practical application, right? Here's a verse, here's an AI. How do these mesh?
And by the way, you're not just throwing a verse on there. Sometimes integration is like, hey, read a verse that has nothing to do with AI.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, I was fortunate since I'm somewhat new to this faculty. I get to take faculty integration with David Turner. He's amazing. It's
fantastic.
That integration is not an afterthought. Integration is the beginning. And so if you take that approach, and I think that's just something unique about Biola. But when you take that approach, it makes you think deeply, and then you recognize, oh my, this verse is directly applicable to this technology.
Good.
How now do I equip students to essentially do the right thing, be ready to do the right thing, and defeat the machine in terms of being able to outright, outcode, develop a better algorithm? That's always something that I'm always trying to teach students. I had a student this last summer who basically I used as a guinea pig to essentially determine if I could teach an undergraduate, junior, rising senior, the fundamental mechanics of how to build an AI large language model system from the ground up. And as that progressed, and this is a very bright student, she made this definitive exclamation to me last week. And I said, so were you able to demystify the AI? She said, oh my gosh, it's just math. And so
interesting.
So she had that revelation moment, that light bulb going off, because over the course of the year, I taught her how to look at the definitive paper behind one of the key algorithms that drives the world, extract the mathematical equation from it, run the calculus from it by hand, then go through the code, get the actual code that's out there, it's open source, walk through that one by one, learn how to manipulate it, and have it running on her GPU machine for the last 30 some odd days in a row. And she said, it's just math. And so for that student to have that light bulb moment go off, that was critical for me, my position as an academician, as a professor. It was also critical because then the confidence switch went on. This student now feels she's any AI. She can design, she can build, she can defeat, she can expand. And so going back to the ontological piece that Mihretu was saying is we have to take that responsibility. To whom much is given, much is expected in return. You know, Philippians 4:13, right? Having the strength to face all conditions. We need to empower one another and the world at large that they can achieve far greater than their potential, far greater than where they came from, far more than they expected, when encouraged and being fed towards what is ultimately good. You know, the beautiful, the true. You know, if you continually feed people the good, the beautiful, and the true, one develops better taste. When you have better taste, you become more demanding of what things should be versus the way they are. That, to me, is the best way to change the world, because as Christians and God, as He's modeled for us, it's about being generous. We have something the world does not have. The more we give it freely, lovingly, openly, with a critical mind to show people how to reach for steak Diane instead of McNuggets, we will tremendously impact people for the better. And so that's kind of where I try to take AI. I try to take AI in a direction that is irrefutably superior, good, pleasing, beneficial to the world. And when we do that, we can change the conversation.
I love that because it hits back to what you were saying earlier, Michael, about we approach this holistically.
Yeah.
So one is like, what's the worldview behind AI? Well, it's actually really just math. I actually hadn't even really thought about that, but you're right. It's just an algorithm. Like, no, that was like helpful to me because I don't understand how a lot of that stuff works. But you're also like, how do we create, which is a biblical idea?
Absolutely.
How do we give, and how do we use this technology to love our neighbors? That's thinking biblically about this tool that we have. So I love it. What do you think it means when we think about business? What would it mean to think biblically about the intersection of business and AI?
Boy, there's so many places to start. I think, first of all, I know this guy pretty well. I want to argue about friction in a bit, but I know him pretty well, and I know he isn't just picking on a verse, right? So, you know, AI and verse of the day, it sounds like a really great starting place. And I think as Christian leaders, you know, we need to realize, like, this isn't dystopia and this isn't utopia. Like, there's something in between those two things. It's not either or. And, you know, we're image bearers, and we're called, you know, to steward over the earth as relational, creative, moral beings. So as I think about this as a Christian business leader, and I think about, like, what is our responsibility? Our responsibility is to engage it, to understand it, to better know what it does and what it can't do, and to steward over top the math, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's as simple as we've got a biblical obligation, in my opinion, to lean in, not my opinion, scripturally, to lean in, to understand this and to steward over it so that it doesn't drift astray, which it will if we don't. And, you know, we've seen this before, you know, we call it social media, and we buried our head in the sand. We were asleep at the wheel, and it's generated the loneliest generation on planet Earth. I don't want to repeat that pattern. So as a business Christian leader, you know, I want to lean in, I want to understand it, I want to use it, I want to engage it, and I want to better understand it so that I can shape its human value at the end of the day. And you know, so that would be the advice I would give is, you know, don't bury your head in the sand ever again. Use it for all the positive reasons, and then shepherd over it to limit all the negative consequences. You know, obviously not all, but to do our best to limit the consequences and unintended consequences.
Mihretu, I'm going to come to you in a second, but without opening up a big debate, just highlight for us where is the difference between the two of you over friction, just so I understand what's going on.
Well, first of all, Yohan and I have lots of debates. So
Okay.
it's
Which
healthy.
we have here all the time.
healthy.
That's
Yeah, healthy
good.
tension.
And
Absolutely.
it's super constructive. And
Yeah.
I'm the entrepreneur. I'm ready to run. Like, I'm ready to go implement this stuff. And Yohan's reminded me, but there's this thing called security. And, occasionally we need to think about data and privacy, and which, of course, I'm going to think about. But, so that's friction, right? And there's certainly friction to think about, the cognitive process. And if we make it too easy on our students, they come out of this environment unprepared. But I do believe there's a difference between healthy and unhealthy friction. Healthy friction is challenging our students and ourselves to think about, doing this and doing this well and learning in the process, so we have high judgment when we need it, when we're in these corner cases, these edge cases. But the unhealthy friction is the muck, the stuff that just gets in our way, the stuff that is actually dehumanizing. So I separate those two.
That makes sense.
And I'm sure we'll have another coffee conversation
I
over
love
this
it.
at some future point. But.
And that's actually to your point earlier, there's an instrumental good about that friction.
Yes.
To disagree well, to discuss, to debate. That's a part of how you learn. And I remember with smartphones, the moment we had Google, people would debate something. They're like, well, let me just look it up. And I was like, no, let's debate it. Let's try to see if we can remember this. That's something that's lost. So I appreciate that dynamic. That's awesome. What would you say as philosopher apologist it means to think biblically about AI?
I think, first of all, to have a very clear conception of the fact that these are tools. Any tool, by definition, could be useful and could be a very dangerous, destructive stuff in your hands. So we all have tools. I mean, there are knives in our kitchen, table, and then we can kill someone with knives, or we can cut up food and, feed our families and so on. I think we need to have that clear conception of, technology in our mind first. And then I think about using technology biblically is really kind of to connect it to our own calling. Okay. And I really share what both of you have said is incredibly helpful. And I think we are in total sync. Incredibly important approach. Like, we're cautious. We're not also like megaphoning this hands-off approach. No, we're not saying hands-off. We're not also saying this is our redeemer. Let's go and grab it. I think that discernment is what I think is biblically kind of implementing and using these technologies to advance the cause of the gospel and help people solve problems and so on. And there are unintended consequences. Let's say self-discovery, self-identity is being lost. If I don't do something, like if I literally don't put my heart into something, if I am trying to cut corners and then AI, think for me, make my bed, cook for me, and I open my refrigerator, what do I need to eat? And we're literally turning ourselves into there is a movie that's what the Disneyland
I don't
movie
know,
where
but AI making my bed, I think I would be okay with that one.
well, I mean, that's that kind of.
I know your point.
We're
I'm just
out
kidding.
resourcing everything. The very
Right.
notion of literally the meaning of life is predicated upon enjoying your daily routines.
Absolutely.
That's what it means. If I hand over everything to these tools, then what am I supposed to do with the time that's in my hand? Like, I come to job and I strike conversation with my colleagues and I make fun of my students and this is what it means. And we're really losing sight of how the technology is supposed to help us and how it's not supposed to help us. That discernment is literally what I think is biblically being kind of sensitive as to how we are supposed to deal and engage with this technology.
I'm going to ask you a question. You can say yes, no, or more complicated. I want your quick take on this. You mentioned a knife, which can be used to stab somebody or for surgery, which is good. So a knife is morally neutral. It's how we use it. Is AI morally neutral?
Absolutely not.
No, not even close.
It's entirely rooted in worldview. So we might think these companies are trying to help us. Look, they are getting across a very subtle message to all of us, such as you are not better than the tools. There are many people who are arguing that you literally are not better than the tool. So you're not only biological machine, you're less than a biological machine. The whole point of transhumanism is just to prove that point. And digital immortality, extracting your mind and uploading it on gadgets, and you won't die, you won't get sick, and so on. What would that do to our conception of the body of Christ and the centrality of the body that you have in resurrection? We're looking forward to that. Chatbots, we're using chatbots, churches are using chatbot, and so on. Why don't a human being respond to the questions that the members of congregations have, as opposed to why are you directing them there? So there are so many subtle things that we might lose sight of. They might really be inconsistent and incompatible with what we believe from a scriptural standpoint. I think that careful discernment is really, really important.
This could be a whole follow-up conversation. And I'm going to have to get your quick take on this because you reacted to this.
Yes.
Like, why, if AI is not morally neutral, then how and when can we use a tool that affects us morally and our worldview? We can't answer that now, but even thinking about that should shape the way we approach tools. But you reacted to my question. Tell me what was in your mind.
The reason I believe like generative AI tools are not morally neutral is because it depends on if it were neutral, you would have a perfect balance mathematically and statistically and numerically in terms of its opinions and how AI is trained and fed. Training and feeding comes down to what you select to train and feed.
Mm-hmm.
And so in AI, when I talk about it being math, it's because AI is essentially massive tables with words and concepts that have a numerical weight attached to them in terms of a probability. And that comes down to frequency, how much, how often, and how something is tuned to say, to respond back with positive, negative, or something in the middle. It goes back to the scripture that comes to my mind is how you raise up a child. And so in the Garden of Eden in Genesis, we knew only good. As human beings, we knew only good. When Satan deceived us, we only gained net bad. Because if you only knew good, and then you were getting taught the knowledge of good and evil, and if you, from an absolute math perspective, only knew good, then the only net gain you got when you learned good and evil was you only learned evil. And so when that works out mathematically now, how you train an AI, for example, usually the first step is you completely absorb everything inside of Wikipedia, right? That's a usual first step in terms of training a large language model. You need to understand syntax, language friction, syntax, language, sequence, diction, etc., semantics, and syntax, right? When that happens, it's accumulating all of this data to then start making weights to be able to say something is more important, less important, higher priority, lower priority. That's, again, this is now getting to the rudimentary pieces of it. But what if you're now only feeding it poetry of violence? What if you're only feeding it, the depositions from The Hague during, sexual violence wrought upon women in unarmed conflict? Then it knows only those things you taught it. Flip side, now let's say you taught an AI starting with the Bible, Greek, Hebrew, Koine. Now you teach it Augustine, Calvin. That AI is going to know things. It's going to be able to understand, respond, and analyze things innately from a perspective of what is good versus poetry of violence, depositions, pornography. What you train an AI defends how it operates. And so that question is AI morally neutral? No. These were built on high volume, high resource languages, which are predominantly English, Wikipedia, then books, then what's available on the English, predominantly Western English internet, because the US internet presence is considerably larger than that of the UK, because we invented the internet here. And so there is a non-random proportional difference. There's a map in terms of the higher frequency of what has been fed these tools. And so we cannot be in a place where AI is morally neutral because the rest of the world doesn't have the digital maturity that the US has, much less English-speaking predominant nations. Now, is the next version of the internet predominantly going to be potentially more non-English. Yes, because there's a billion more people in the PRC, a billion more people in India with a lot more languages than we have in the US, but lower probability, lower propensity, and lower abundance, if you will. And so the next versions of the internet will be predominantly non-English based. And so when we disobey God's command to multiply, go forth and multiply, when we have fewer families, then fewer people of that cognate language are present. So in one sense, if you were just to think of it from an arms race perspective, the people who have greater population, who produce more in digital format, in their literacy, in their content, in their media, that could dramatically shift the responses of an AI. Could.
Could is key.
But this is the stuff I think about late at night.
And not, it gets worse than that, actually, right?
Okay.
Because not only were they trained on biased data sets from a morality standpoint, but that bias is amplified as more people with a bias that may be counter to our worldview are retraining it.
Yes.
So there's something called bias amplification. So not only is it already biased based on the training sets, but that it's perpetuated over time. So I think it's dangerous from the start, and it engaging more. And again, I keep saying that's why we as believers need to engage, because we have a counter worldview.
Yes.
That is more necessary than ever in the world.
Can I add something?
Sure.
I think you both have raised a very important point, especially when you talked about computers being like number crunching tools and nothing else. I think that speaks volumes, because there's a huge confusion. Let's say computers can have their own free will and computers can have consciousness, blah, blah. It literally shatters that argument. Okay, here's a predetermined tool. You set the tone already from the get-go, how the tool is supposed to operate. And the general public doesn't really know that. Okay, oh yeah, ChatGPT is conversing with me like a mic. Oh, there must be some agent in there, so on. People are falling in love these days, romantically.
Well, that's shocking ignorance.
Yeah, shocking ignorance. But when you lift the hood, it's not that surprising. The sophistication is surprising, but that's a reflection of your mind. Like, that's a reflection of how human beings can go, how far they can go in thinking, and the sophistication that they bring to the table. So I think what you just said is a very good response to this hallucinatory comments that people are making. Oh, emotions can be uploaded. First-person data can be absolutely proved by AI and so on.
Sure.
There's literally nothing there. There's nothing there. People should really know that. And computers cannot generate not a single thought of their own, because that's not an agent. What you haven't put there is not going to come out of that. And I think that's a very good point. That's a mathematics-based number crunching tool and nothing else.
Well said. I like that. Last question is, I'm curious because my son is in business and my daughter's doing nursing, which obviously intersects with science, and you're a colleague. I want to know, what is Biola and or Talbot doing uniquely to lead the way as it comes to AI? What are we doing?
Yeah, I'll speak from Biola. I guess we are building our own AIs. That's the first bit. And we are taking the approach that I described. What happens when you build an AI from the ground up, from a completely biblical perspective, that is ultimately God-honoring, edifying to the human? And because the Bible and all of the commentaries, analysis, is the most sophisticated and the most infinitely sophisticated written piece on the planet. And the more you delve into the scripture, the more of the sophistication starts revealing itself. That is infinite, because it was inspired by God. So, mathematically, when you take an image and you do a projection from something that is infinite to then another surface, you imbue some of that. And so there is an unbelievable richness there. So I'm very excited in this day and age of creating AIs that are biblically informed and can be astonishing in the limitless expansion there. So that's one. The other is on a practical note, because we're called to go out into the world. We're called to love one another. And so the first bit I was talking about is kind of my expression and how I trying to live out loving the Lord my God with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength. The second part now on the horizontal axis is how do we use AI to uplift and serve and love the widow, the orphan, the sojourner, the infirmed, essentially the definition of biblical justice. And so that is why I am really focused on how to build AIs for robotics, for serving those who are infirmed. That is a really challenging area, but I find a calling towards it because I can't think of a better way of serving humanity.
I love it. Great word. Tell us a little about business.
We're done a lot. The way we think about this is engage, won't surprise you, educate and elevate. Elevate our thinking about how to use AI righteously. So we've launched an AI lab across campus. So it's interdisciplinary, which is really important because what it's doing is it's embedding the thinking from across the university, and it's not just technology or not just business driving the way. We're thinking about this from all the humanities perspective. We're thinking about it much more broadly, and students are engaging. They're engaging in dialogue. They're building. They're developing. I learn from the students. Every Monday morning I get like a tutorial. So I don't have an AI of the day like Yohan does, but I have a 30-minute tutorial of hey, how can you use N8N to automate your workflows? And I get like this. Reverse teaching from the students, but we're holding them accountable for thinking about this differently. And the way I like to describe it is, our tech stack rests on the foundation of ethics, and our tech stack starts with, can AI do this? That's an easy question. Should AI do this? That's a much harder question. And if you don't have a worldview, you're not biblically grounded, and you don't have a set of ethics that you're making that judgment through. And then ultimately, if the answer to those two questions are yes, how should it?
Exactly.
So that we're doing it well. So we're engaging in that every single day. Every class inside the business school is teaching AI, but it's teaching ethics side by side with it. We've got an AI studio that we're designing to partner with kingdom leaders and to help entrepreneurs, locally to engage and to be a bridge to the outer world, and sort of the version of Acts 1:8. Like, how do we take this beyond Jerusalem and start to reach the outer parts of the world? So we're partnering with ministries. We're helping, we've worked with Samaritan's Purse and Global Media Outreach to help them build tools. So lots of things. But the short of it is we're engaging very, very actively, but we're doing it in a way that elevates students' thinking so that they don't just, leverage AI and start to generate AI slop, as opposed to, creating kingdom impact.
Love it. Great stuff. Mihretu.
Yeah. So in apologetics and philosophy, we take philosophical challenges that come out of disciplines like artificial intelligence and neuroscience and transhumanism and, currently like hot button issues. We have to respond to those things from a biblical standpoint. It's our responsibility to give biblically grounded responses to people and help them to have a biblically sound understanding of, the discipline of neuroscience and so on. And currently I'm teaching the philosophy of neuroscience, and I taught philosophy of AI last semester, and I'm going to teach philosophy of physics next, the spring semester. So all of these courses are going to equip believers, and they are connected to AI, to generative AI. And there are so many claims being made that are contrary to what we think is the truth. And we have to lovingly, respectfully bring these issues to the table and invite those people to have sound conversations with us. And that's our responsibility. And I think we're doing great in that. And as you know, Sean, we are, upgrading apologetics in so many different ways, and conversations are going on. And my hope is in the future to have equivalent apologetics lab, just like mimicking your style.
Let's do it.
And that style is going to be in sync with what you guys are doing. It's the apologetics lab where we literally wrestle with currently hot button issues and cutting edge research that are coming out from different disciplines. What kind of responses can we produce, biblically grounded, just like Mike was saying. And I really liked everything that you both have said. This is just incredible. You rarely find such a balanced understanding about AI or technology in general. There are two extremes. Go and grab, this is your redeemer, or hands off. We are somewhere in between. No. We grab a little bit of from here. We also push back. And that's our uniqueness here at Biola. And that is the most important position to be in. And so I think I'm hoping and looking forward and praying to have Apologetics Lab.
Well, Mihretu, we're thrilled to have you here. When we were looking for new faculty, we knew who you were, just knew the excellence that you would bring. But people ask me, what are the big questions coming up in apologetics and theology and culture? It's always AI. So I'd have somebody publishing the way you are, speaking the way you are, teaching the classes, serves our students really well. And that's true for all of you. Thanks for so much time. Thanks for your great work for the kingdom, what you're doing here at Biola. If you're watching this, you can email us at thinkbiblically@biola.edu. Questions from this episode. If there's other areas related to AI you'd love us to cover, let me know. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, comment below. I'm going to have my team watch this. And if there's certain areas, issues that came up today, you're like, wait a minute, I want more help to think biblically or think apologetically about that, let us know and we will circle back. Fellas, this was fun. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for having us.